He thought a patch of sand and sky would finally be enough to bury the noise in his head. He thought distance, and silence, and one good dog could keep the ghosts on the other side of the horizon. He was wrong. It started, like so many bad stories in the desert, with boredom, a pickup full of restless boys, and a cruel idea. The sun over Sierra Blanca, New Mexico, was already half dead, a flattened red coin sinking into a horizon of jagged mesas. Wind carried dust and the distant hum of the new lithium plant on the edge of town, its steel skeleton clawing at the sky like an unfinished threat. On 10 neglected acres a few miles out, a faded single-wide trailer sat crooked beside a leaning barn. The property had once been a working ranch. Now it was mostly mesquite, scrub, and silence. Silence and Rex. The big sable German shepherd stood in the narrow band of shade cast by the barn, watching the gravel road with the stillness of a soldier on post. A thin scar ran under his left eye, and another puckered the muscle along his ribs. His right hind leg bore a faint, practiced limp. He was retired now, at least on paper. But no one had explained that to the part of his brain wired for threat. He heard the trucks long before the dust plume reached the property line. 2 of them, engines revving harder than they needed to, loud music bleeding through thin doors, laughter that had the wrong edge. Rex's ears pricked forward, his gaze cut to the trailer. Inside, Ethan Cole didn't hear anything at first. The old swamp cooler rattled in the window, and the radio on the counter murmured some country song about busted fences and second chances. Ethan stood at the sink, sleeves rolled, forearms corded and scarred, hands in dishwater he'd already let go, lukewarm. His dark blonde hair showed a few too many silver threads for his 39 years. His eyes, pale gray, almost colorless, moved constantly, even when the rest of him stilled. He'd been working on that, trying to teach his body that Sierra Blanca wasn't Kandahar, that his front porch wasn't an Overwatch position. He dried a plate, set it in the cupboard. That was when the bass from the approaching trucks rattled the glass. Rex gave one sharp bark. Ethan's shoulders tightened automatically. The dish towel stilled in his hands. The part of him that counted ranges and angles and exits snapped awake, just like that, like it had never really gone anywhere. He moved to the window and lifted a corner of the dingy curtain. A white F-150 and a black Tacoma roared to a stop just outside his fence. 4 boys, maybe late teens, spilled out. Ball caps, sunglasses. One with a Sunridge Energy security hoodie, too big for him. Another with the lazy swagger of somebody who had never been told no and believed that meant the word didn't exist. Ethan recognized one of them even from a distance. Clay Riker, Sheriff Dean Riker's son. Quarterback, local golden boy, never met a UFO. Consequence that stuck. Of course. Ethan's jaw clenched. He'd been in town 3 months. Long enough to learn the food was salty, the water tasted faintly metallic, and the sheriff's kid treated the region like his personal obstacle course. He slipped his boots on, whistled once, low. Rex moved instantly, trotting from the barn to the front of the trailer, posture straight, head high. The dog stopped just behind the sagging gate, right where Ethan had drilled him to stop. The boys killed the music. Dust drifted around them. Clay hopped up to sit on his tailgate like it was a throne. "Look at that," he said, nudging the kid in the Sunridge hoodie. Ex-soldier's got himself a furry landmine. The others laughed. Ethan stepped out onto the warped wooden steps. He didn't bother to open the gate. His presence alone drew the laughter down a notch. He wasn't a big man, not in the way high school kids imagined big. But there was a density to him, a coiled quiet. "Road's public," Clay called, spreading his arms as if he owned the entire desert. Didn't realize the dirt on both sides came with it. "You're on my fence line," Ethan said, voice level, flat. "You've been cutting across the back pasture all week. That stops today." Clay hopped down, strolling closer. Rex gave a low growl from deep in his chest. "Relax, Grandpa," Clay said. "We're just blowing off steam. There's nowhere else to ride." "Take it out on the county roads," Ethan replied. "Not my land." The kid in the hoodie shifted, nervous. "Clay, come on, man. My dad's gonna flip if we're late for shift." "Your dad works for my dad's boss," Clay said without looking at him. "We're fine." He stopped just outside the gate. Rex's growl deepened. Clay stared at the dog, then at Ethan. A slow grin crept over his face. "You know what they say about old war dogs, right?" he asked. "Sometimes they're too broken to bother putting down." Ethan's eyes chilled several degrees. "Move along," he said quietly. "Last warning." Clay's grin faltered for just a beat. Something in Ethan's tone slipped under his skin like a splinter. But peer pressure is louder than instincts at 18, especially when the peers are watching. He stepped back, held up his hands. "Sure thing, Mr. Cole. Didn't mean to upset your mascot." They piled back into the trucks, engines roaring. Ethan watched until the taillights blurred into the heat shimmer, until dust swallowed them whole. He didn't relax. Rex's hackles stood, ears locked in the direction the trucks had gone. "I know," Ethan said, fingers brushing the fur along Rex's neck. "I don't like it either." He didn't know yet that the worst thing about that afternoon wasn't the boys at his fence line. It was that they had already noticed the barrel. The rusted chemical drum lay half exposed where the arroyo cut into the back corner of Ethan's property. The late summer storms had chewed away the bank, revealing a sliver of flaking blue metal streaked with something that smelled wrong. Rex had found it 2 days ago, nose wrinkling, pawing at the dry earth around it. Ethan had hauled him away, throat tight, promising himself he'd call the county environmental office the next morning. He never made that call. Sunridge Energy had a schedule to keep. Night in the desert came like someone flicking a dimmer switch. Temperature dropped. The lithium plant's glow on the horizon grew stronger, pale and sickly. Inside the trailer, Ethan stretched out on the old couch, one arm thrown over his eyes. Rex sprawled on the floor below, head on his paws. The TV muttered the late local news, promises about jobs, a ribbon cutting, the sheriff shaking hands with a man in a Sunridge suit, all teeth and no eyes. Ethan was drifting toward sleep when Rex's head snapped up, a soft sound, just on the edge of hearing. Gravel, laughter, the faint whine of an engine trying to be quiet. Ethan was on his feet before his brain finished registering the noise. The rifle by the door stayed where it was. He didn't need to escalate. Not yet. He slid to the side of the window, lifted the curtain an inch. Headlights off. Trucks rolling slow. They stopped by the back fence this time. Ethan's gut tightened. "Stay," he whispered to Rex. The dog ignored him. By the time Ethan opened the back door, Rex was already a dark streak across the yard, heading for the field. Ethan hissed his name, more a breath than a sound, but adrenaline was already in the dog's veins. He had threat, vector, distance. Orders would have to catch up. The boys pushed through a loose section of wire, flashlights bobbing. Clay carried bolt cutters. Another boy had a canister Ethan recognized from too many convoy patrols. Civilian-grade pepper spray, big enough for riot control. Rex came low and fast. No barking now, just a dark missile. "Whoa!" the kid with the spray shouted, stumbling. Clay stepped forward. "Go on then," he yelled, half scared, half thrilled. "Do your job, war hero." He flicked something small and black in his hand. The crackle of a stun gun sliced through the night. Rex veered, avoiding the first lunge. The second caught him in the flank, sending a jolt through muscle and nerve, dropping him to one knee. He snarled, teeth snapping, trying to get back up. "Hit him again!" Clay shouted. The boy with the spray panicked. He emptied the canister directly into Rex's face. The dog howled, pawing at his own muzzle, eyes burning. "This is messed up, man!" The kid in the hoodie blurted. "Clay!" "Shut up!" Clay snapped, twisted, and in one ugly motion looped a length of rope around Rex's neck. The trucks revved. Ethan cleared the back steps, lungs locking when he saw the rope trail from the dog's collar toward the hitch of the white F-150. "Hey!" His voice ripped across the field. "Let him go!" For one split second, Clay met Ethan's eyes over the darkness, and in that moment, Ethan saw it, the realization that they'd gone too far, that this wasn't a video game, that there was an actual line and they'd crossed it. Fear flared behind Clay's bravado. Fear. And then stubbornness. He yanked his arm up. "Punch it," he barked. The truck lurched forward. The rope snapped taut. Rex's body jerked, legs scrambling, then collapsing as he was dragged through scrub and stone, a strangled yelp torn from his throat. Ethan ran like the ground was falling away beneath him. He didn't make it in time. The rope caught on a jag of rebar jutting from a half-buried fence post. It broke with a gunshot crack. Rex's body tumbled into the arroyo, slamming against the exposed barrel, then disappearing over the lip into darkness. The trucks fishtailed again. And then they were gone, panic and exhaust trailing behind them. Silence rushed into the space they had left. For a moment, Ethan stood where he was, chest heaving, every system screaming at him to chase, to shoot, to drag those boys from their cabs, and Rex. He slid down the bank, dirt and stones tearing at his palms. The smell hit him first. Not blood, not yet. A chemical sting, sharp enough to make his eyes water, rising from a thin line of seepage glistening along the cracked barrel. He found Rex in the shadow of it. The dog lay twisted, half on his side, half on his back. Rope burned into the fur at his neck. One front leg kicked weakly, then stilled. His muzzle was raw and wet from the spray. His chest rose in shallow, uneven pulls. For a heartbeat, Ethan's vision narrowed until the whole world was just that chest. Up, down, up, down. He dropped to his knees. "Rex!" His voice cracked. "Hey! Hey, buddy, look at me." One eye slitted open. Glassy, trying. The tail gave a feeble thump against the mud. "Attaboy," Ethan whispered. His hands moved without his permission, checking ribs, spine, airway. The old medic drills he'd never officially been trained for, but had watched 100 times overseas. Okay, I got you." He stripped his shirt, wrapped it quickly around the worst of the abrasions, careful not to press where he wasn't sure. He slid his arms beneath Rex, lifting him as if the 100 pounds were air. Rex whimpered once, a sound that cut deeper than any shrapnel had. Ethan's jaw locked. The desert around him was very, very quiet. The lithium plant hummed. A coyote yipped far off. Somewhere, a billboard with the sheriff's smile on it flapped in the wind. Something old and dangerous uncoiled in Ethan's chest. He had come here to die quietly. They had just made that impossible. The closest regular vet was in Sierra Blanca. Ethan didn't go there. Sheriff Dean Riker's name was on the side of every patrol truck in town. Dean's wife was Sunridge's public relations director. Dean's son had just tried to kill Ethan's dog on the fringes of a chemical dump. Trust wasn't just thin. It was gone. So Ethan drove past the town, past the clock tower and the diner and the half-lit motel. He drove another 25 miles, tires humming on cracked asphalt toward a strip of businesses outside Las Cruces. The sign was small and plain. High desert animal care. No cute cartoon paw prints. No cheerful paw-shaped font. Just black letters on whiteboard. He'd picked it months ago because the woman who ran it had once, quietly, taped a faded Army Ranger crest in her window on Memorial Day. The bell over the glass door hadn't finished chiming when a woman in green scrubs stepped out from the back. She was mid-40s, hair shaved close on one side and pulled back in a messy knot on the other, dark eyes sharp and tired. A faded tattoo of a field medic's caduceus ran up her forearm. "Whatever it is," she started, "if it's bleeding on my—" Her gaze fell on Rex in Ethan's arms. The rest of the sentence died. "How long?" she asked, stepping aside to usher him through a swinging door. "Half an hour," Ethan said. "Maybe 40 minutes. He was dragged. Pepper spray, possible chemical exposure. He hit something on the way down." "Table 3, she snapped. "I'm Dr. Hannah Mercer. Put him there. Don't let go of his head." Ethan did as he was told. The stainless steel was cold against his forearms. Rex's breath wheezed, a rasping saw blade in his chest. Hannah's hands moved fast and sure. IV line. Oxygen mask. Quick neurocheck that made Ethan's stomach twist at the lack of response in one hind leg. "What did this?" she asked. No judgment, just triage. "Kids," Ethan said, "and a rope." She didn't swear, not out loud, her mouth compressed into a hard line. "You military?" she asked. "Was." Ethan's voice felt too big in his throat. "He was my partner overseas. Explosive detection." Hannah's fingers paused for half a second on Rex's flank, feeling the heat under his fur. "Then he's already beaten worse odds," she said. "Get out." Ethan blinked. "What? Waiting room, she clarified. If you hover, you'll get in my way. I'll either save him or I won't. You being in here won't change that. He wanted to argue. He wanted to plant himself at Rex's side and dare God or anyone else to move him. Instead, he looked at his own hands. They were shaking. He stepped back. Doc, he said quietly, if he starts to slip, call me in. I'm not letting him die alone. For the first time, Hannah's eyes softened by a fraction. I'll scream, she said. Now go. The waiting room smelled like disinfectant and old coffee. Ethan sat in a plastic chair that complained every time he shifted. He could hear muffled voices through the wall, the clink of metal, the beeping of machines not meant for animals, but repurposed because Hannah believed they should have them too. He stared at the wall clock until the minute hand blurred. The door chimed once. Footsteps approached. A chair down the row creaked. You look like a man waiting on a verdict, a woman's voice said, low and uninvited. Ethan didn't respond. The reception desk doesn't have a sign, the woman continued, but I'm pretty sure you're not supposed to bleed on it. He looked down, surprised to see dried smears of his own blood on his arms, his jeans, Rex's fur ground into his skin. Across from him, a woman in a worn denim jacket sat with a cat carrier balanced on her knees. The cat inside glared at the world like it owed him money. The woman's hair was pulled back under a baseball cap, a press badge hanging from her neck. Grace Turner, Sierra Blanca Gazette. Small town reporter. Not mine, Ethan said. The blood. I figured, Grace replied. The dog looked worse. A beat of silence. You're Ethan Cole, she added. You bought the Ramirez place out on County Road 8, ex-military. Drives a truck held together by spite and duct tape. Been reading my mail? Ethan asked. Been reading the town, Grace answered. We're small. New faces are kind of a big deal. He didn't want to talk. Didn't want to spill anything where it could be printed and turned into something for people to gossip over their chicken fried steak. But Clay's laugh. The rope. Rex's eyes. It was Dean's boy, he heard himself say. Clay and some friends. They dragged him, dumped him in an arroyo. On my property. Grace went very still. You sure? She asked. He looked me in the eye when he did it. Anger flickered across her face, bright and sharp. You call the sheriff? She asked, voice dry. Ethan huffed something that might have been a laugh if there hadn't been so much gravel in it. No. Smart, Grace murmured. Dean Riker doesn't investigate his own dinner table. She shifted the cat carrier, leaning forward. Listen, she said. Sunridge has been dumping chemicals out past your place for months. Drums and dry washes, tankers at night. People report it. They get inspections that find nothing. My sources dry up or move away, or suddenly have shiny new jobs. She watched him carefully. You finding one of their barrels is not a coincidence, she said. And Dean's kid going after your dog the same week you were seen patching fence near one of those arroyos? That's not a coincidence either. How do you know what I've been doing on my land? Ethan asked. Grace tilted her head. You ever seen a bored reporter in a dying town? We either drink or snoop. I can't afford the drinking. The door to the back opened. Hannah stood there, arms folded, scrub top streaked with blood. That wasn't hers. Ethan stood up too fast. The room tilted for a second, then snapped back into focus. Well, he asked. Hannah exhaled through her nose. He's stubborn, she said. I like stubborn patients. Broken ribs, torn ligaments, rope burns, chemical burns to the eyes and nose. I flushed him until I thought his head would float. No spinal cord transection that I can see, but there's nerve damage. He may always limp. He may never run like before. But he's alive, Ethan said. For now, Hannah answered. The next 24 hours are critical. I'll keep him here. You can sleep in your truck or not at all. Either way, you're not sitting on my exam room floor. Something eased, just a fraction, behind Ethan's breastbone. Thank you, he said. The words felt too small. Don't thank me yet, Hannah replied. If he crashes, I'll call you. If you crash, that's on you. She went back through the door, leaving it swinging. Grace watched him a moment. You know, she said, there are easier ways to make friends in this town than going to war with the sheriff's family and a billion-dollar mining company. I didn't pick a fight, Ethan said. They did. Grace's eyes narrowed, like she was recalibrating him. Maybe, she said, but they'll tell everyone it's the other way around. She stood, slinging the cat carrier by her side. If you decide you're done letting them write the story, she added, you know where to find me. Ethan didn't sleep. He sat in his truck, staring at the dark outline of the clinic. The lithium plant's distant rumble settled into something like background noise. He tried to build a plan in his head and kept finding the same missing pieces. Sunridge, sheriff, drums, kids. Why now? His phone buzzed just before dawn, a number he hadn't seen in 2 years. He almost let it go to voicemail. Almost. He answered on the third ring. Thought you were dead, a woman's voice said on the other end. Crisp East Coast vowels with an exhaustion under them that matched his own. Or hiding somewhere where satellites don't reach. Maya, Ethan said, didn't know I still existed in your contact list. Ex-Rangers who ruined my night shift by calling unsecure from the middle of nowhere, she replied. Hard to forget. Once upon a time, Staff Sergeant Maya Lawson had been the voice in Ethan's ear from a drab concrete bunker 8,000 miles away. Intelligence, signals, the invisible map behind every mission. He hadn't spoken to her since the day the convoy exploded and the official story laid the blame at his feet. How'd you get this number? He asked. You pinged a location within 10 miles of a Sunridge facility, she said. And I monitor those because I'm paranoid and sadly usually right. You watching me? Ethan asked. I'm watching them, Maya answered. You just stepped onto their board. What happened? He told her. Not everything. Not about the way his hands had shaken when he carried Rex. Not about the sound he'd made when he first saw the rope burns. Just the facts. The kids, the barrel, the plant, the sheriff. On the other end of the line, he could hear fingers on keys. Sunridge Energy is a nice shiny shell, Maya said after a moment. Behind it, Kestrel Holdings, private defense contracting, logistics, black budget pipeline. They had their fingers all over that convoy op we don't talk about. Ethan's grip on the phone tightened. You're telling me the people who killed my unit are drilling holes in my backyard? He asked. I'm telling you, Maya replied. Their influence doesn't end where your discharge papers do. That plant is a hub, lithium out, something else in. They do not like unpredictable elements near their mess, like, say, stubborn ex-operators with explosive detection dogs and a sense of justice. So they sent teenagers, Ethan said, disbelief sharpening his tone. They sent a message, Maya answered, through the most deniable route available. If you'd shot one of those kids last night, you'd already be in cuffs or a cell, or a body bag. Ethan stared through his windshield at the brightening horizon. Can you prove any of this? He asked. Not in a way that survives court, Maya said. Kestrel are very, very good at making things look like accidents, bad intel, or conspiracy theories. I don't need court, Ethan said quietly. I need leverage. Leverage gets you killed faster than a bullet if you don't know how to use it, Maya warned. Walk away, Cole. Take your dog and go somewhere else. Idaho, Maine. I'll send you a list of places without major corporate footprints. Ethan watched the clinic door. He remembered Rex's single, stubborn eye opening in the arroyo. They put a rope around his throat, Maya, he said. My dog, my partner, they dumped him like trash. I'm not walking away. You going to war alone? She asked. He thought of Grace Turner, eyes hot when he said Clay's name. Thought of Dr. Hannah Mercer, who had probably seen enough military injuries to recognize a pattern. Thought of the people drinking cloudy water in Sierra Blanca and telling themselves it was fine. Maybe not, he said. Silence hummed on the other end. Then Maya sighed. All right, she said. You never listened to me and Helmand either. I'll see what I can pull on Kestrel, Sunridge, and anyone named Riker or Briggs in their orbit. I'm still on the inside, for now. But if this blows back on me, I won't drag you down, Ethan said. You already are, she replied. He could hear the wry smile in it. Check your email in 6 hours. Use the dummy account I made you when you were busy ignoring all my other good advice. The line went dead. Ethan closed his eyes for a second, then stepped out of the truck. The clinic door opened before he reached it. You're still upright, Hannah said. Impressive. How is he? Ethan asked. Sleeping, she replied, which is what you should be doing. He made it through the night. That doesn't mean you get to take him home and throw a parade. She hesitated. He tried to get up when he smelled you in the hall, she added. Fell right back down, whined like he was being murdered. I told him to knock it off. He didn't listen. So he's definitely your dog. Something in Ethan's throat tightened again. He swallowed past it. Can I see him? He asked. 2 minutes, Hannah said. No more, and then you go shower. You smell like anger and road dust. Rex lay on a thick blanket inside a kennel that could have held a medium-sized cow. Bandages swaddled his chest and neck. A plastic cone framed his head like a miserable halo. One front paw had an IV taped in place. His eyes opened when Ethan stepped in. They were still cloudy, still pained, but they sharpened when they locked on Ethan's face. Hey, partner, Ethan whispered, dropping to one knee. He threaded his fingers through the fur along Rex's shoulder, careful of the stitches. The dog huffed a breath, tail sweeping weakly. You did good, Ethan said. You held the line. Now I got it. Hannah watched from the doorway, arms folded. She'd seen this kind of thing before. Men who could talk about blown-out buildings and missing limbs without blinking, brought to their knees by a whimper from a four-legged friend. You're not going to do anything stupid, are you? She asked quietly. Ethan didn't look up. Define stupid, he said. Anything that makes me have to attend 2 funerals instead of 1, she replied. You just told me he made it, Ethan said. I said he's stable, Hannah corrected. Not safe. Ethan rose, gently patting Rex's side. Keep him alive, he said. I'll take care of the rest. By the time Ethan's email dinged 6 hours later, he'd already driven back to Sierra Blanca, showered in water that smelled faintly of metal and something else he couldn't quite name, and stared at the mirror until his own eyes looked like a stranger's. Maya's message was compressed, encrypted, and hidden behind 3 layers of junk mail. When he peeled them back and let the file expand, his screen filled with names, company logos, flow charts, Sunridge, Kestrel, a private security firm called Red Mesa Protection, contracted to handle risk mitigation around critical infrastructure in the American Southwest. Red Mesa's regional security director, Colton Briggs. Former Army, dishonorable discharge sealed. Last deployment. Advisory liaison to a joint task force in the same region where Ethan's convoy had. Blown apart. There it was. The line. From the roadside bomb in a dusty valley overseas, to the bright, too clean plant on the edge of his town, to the rope around his dog's neck. He printed exactly 3 pages. Names, contracts, 1 blurry satellite print of tankers moving from a restricted depot to a site labeled Sun Ridge Storage Yard, permit pending. Then he folded the papers into an envelope and drove to the Gazette. Grace Turner's office smelled like old ink and desperation. The Gazette occupied a corner of a building that had once been a hardware store. Now it was mostly empty desks and a coffee maker that rattled louder than Ethan's truck. A corkboard held up clippings about high school football wins and bake sales that had raised not quite enough money for whatever they were meant to fix. Grace sat at the desk nearest the door, hunched over a screen. She looked up when Ethan stepped in. You look like a man who's made a decision he can't take back, she said. He tossed the envelope onto her keyboard. You wanted story fuel, he said. There. Grace opened it, skimmed the first sheet. Her lips moved silently over some of the acronyms. Her face changed. This is... She looked up sharply. Where did you get this? Does it matter? Ethan asked. Yes, she said. Because if this is real and I publish, they will come for both of us. If it's fake, they'll cut my tongue out in court and leave you hanging as the crazy vet with a grudge. It's real, Ethan said. That's not an answer, Grace replied. It's a statement. He hesitated. Then he exhaled. I had access, he said. Back when I was in uniform, we were told a lot of lies. I kept some receipts. My friend inside sent me the new ones. Friend, Grace repeated. Inside what? The part of the government that gets blamed when the rest of it wants to look innocent, Ethan said. The part that knows what Kestrel really is. Grace leaned back, paper dangling from her fingers. Jesus, she whispered. This town thought its biggest problem was the diner running out of green chili. She stared at him. What do you want from me? She asked. I'm one reporter with a dying print run and a website 3 people read. You're local, Ethan said. People trust you, even when they pretend they don't. You stitch this to what they can see: dirty water, sick cattle, headaches downwind of the plant. And it's not just my word against theirs anymore. And when Sheriff Riker shows up with a warrant, Grace asked. Then you've got a choice, Ethan said. Stand down or stand up. Her eyes flashed. You have no idea how long I've been waiting for someone to ask me that, she said. Fine, I'll start digging. Quiet, off the books. But you have to stay alive long enough for this to matter. I'm working on it, Ethan replied. Does that work better than your previous plan? She asked. He didn't answer. He was already turning toward the door when she called after him. Hey, Cole, he paused. They didn't just pick your dog by accident, she said. They picked him because they thought he was your weak point. They were right, Ethan said. They just misjudged what that means. Colton Briggs made his first move that night. The trailer burned fast. It started in the barn, where someone had stacked bales of hay that Ethan didn't remember buying. Accelerant soaked, one flicked match. The wind did the rest. By the time Ethan turned off the highway and saw the glow on the horizon, the barn was a collapsing skeleton, throwing sparks into the dark. The trailer's side was already licked by flame. He hit the brakes so hard his seatbelt bit his chest, then killed the engine and ran. Heat rolled off the yard in waves. He could feel the ache of it on his face, the sting of smoke in his lungs. He didn't shout for Rex. Rex wasn't here, thank God, but his mind supplied the image anyway, of fur catching fire, He forced it down. He kicked in the back door, squinting through the dark static of smoke. He had exactly two things he could not lose, and one of them was miles away in a kennel. The other was under the floor. He went straight for the bedroom closet, dropping to his knees and ripping at the rug. The heat overhead increased, wood groaning. He peeled back stained carpet to reveal the trap door he'd built the day he moved in. 3 screws, 1 hinge. He yanked it open, dropped into the crawl space, and grabbed the metal lockbox shoved against the brick pier. By the time he climbed out, the ceiling in the living room was drooping like wet paper. Flames flickered along it, seeking air. He ran. He didn't look back until he was in the truck, engine screaming, yard shrinking in his rear view. His hands shook on the wheel. The trailer exploded behind him as the propane tank went, lighting up the night like a flare. Somewhere in that wash of orange and black, a camera lens glinted 100 yards away, tucked into the rocks of the next property. Briggs watched the fire through binoculars, lips curling into something that might have been a smile on someone else. "Your move, Ranger," he murmured. Ethan didn't go to the sheriff. He went to Lloyd Baker. Lloyd's ranch sat on the other side of the county road. 65 acres, 3 horses, 1 battered windmill. Lloyd himself had the posture of a man who had spent his youth hunched over bar stools and the rest of it bent over fence posts. White hair under a sweat-stained hat, blue eyes that missed nothing. He'd appeared on Ethan's porch the first week with a jar of pickles and a half-serious warning about rattlesnakes and scorpions. Then he'd retreated back to his own land, content to wave from a distance like a ship spotted on the horizon. Now he stood on his porch, watching Ethan's truck pull up with the lockbox on the passenger seat and soot smeared across his face. "Smelled smoke," Lloyd said. "Didn't expect the source to come visit." "They burned me out," Ethan said. "Barn, trailer, everything." "Dog?" Lloyd's eyes sharpened. "Clinic," Ethan answered. "Barely." Lloyd spat a neat arc of tobacco juice into the dirt. "You do something heroic or something stupid?" he asked. "They poisoned land that isn't theirs and tried to kill the only living thing I trust," Ethan said. "I didn't take it well." Lloyd considered that. "Fair," he said. "Come inside." If Ethan had expected a simple ranch house, he was disappointed. The exterior was rough. The interior was not maps. Everywhere. Old topo charts of the county, aerial photographs, a faded satellite print of somewhere overseas that Ethan suspected he recognized. The mantel held 3 photos in cheap frames, a much younger Lloyd in a uniform that predated Ethan's by decades, a group of men in desert camo, a shield with U.S. Marshal etched into it. Ethan blinked. "You're federal?" he asked. "Was," Lloyd said. "They gave me a watch and a handshake. I gave them 30 years they don't know what to do with." He poured 2 fingers of something amber into mismatched glasses, handed one to Ethan. "You're not the first ghost to come out here," Lloyd said. "You just brought your own." He nodded at the lockbox. "What's in there?" he asked. "Receipts," Ethan said. "Thought so," Lloyd replied. "I've seen too many men stare at something no one else can see not to recognize the look. I've been tracking Sunridge since they bought their first acre. Couldn't make anything stick, not as a civilian. They like that." "We make it stick together," Ethan said. "You, me, Grace, Hannah, Maya on the wire. Sheriff Riker if we can figure out whether he's crooked or just compromised." "Dean Riker is a man who took the easy handshake one too many times," Lloyd said. "Does that make him crooked?" "In my book, yes. But even crooks can, on occasion, decide they don't want their grandkids growing up with brown water. So we give him a choice," Ethan said. "Stand with us or go down with them." Lloyd eyed him over the rim of his glass. "You're gearing up for a siege, son," he said. "You ready for that?" Ethan thought of Rex, bandaged and hating the cone around his neck. Thought of his unit's names etched on a black stone in a city that never thought about the dirt they died in. "I've already been through one," he said. "This time I get to pick the ground." Lloyd grunted. "Then we better make sure we own every inch of it," he said. The storm came 3 days later, not rain, sand, the wind, swung around out of the south and picked up half the desert with it, flinging it against houses and windows, turning the world outside into a beige blur. Sirens howled. The lithium plant lowered its stacks, warning beacons blinking red through the murk. Inside Lloyd's ranch house, the air was still. The storm shutters rattled, but the generator hummed. On the kitchen table, Ethan's lockbox lay open. Pages, photos, maps. A rough sketch of a plan that involved more arrows than he'd have preferred. Rex lay on a dog bed by the couch, cone grudgingly removed for the moment under Hannah's strict supervision via phone. His bandaged leg stuck out at an awkward angle, but his eyes were clear, focused. "Far as they know, you're out," Lloyd said. "No trailer, no forward operating base. They think they scared you off or sent you packing to wherever war dogs go to die." "They'd have heard if I left town," Ethan said. "Sunridge has cameras on the highway. They know my truck better than I do." "Which is why you aren't taking it anywhere tonight," Lloyd replied. He pointed at the map. "Red Mesa Protection has a base camp in that old gravel pit near the plant," he said. "Briggs will stage from there. If I were him, I'd come at you under cover of the storm. Less visibility, less chance of rubberneckers." "How many?" Ethan asked. 6 to 10, Lloyd said. "Enough to feel invincible, not enough to admit they're worried." Maya's latest email had confirmed it. An order for detention and relocation of an unnamed problem assets in Sierra Blanca County, signed by Briggs. CC'd to a Sunridge legal liaison and someone in Kestrel's Denver office. Detention and relocation. Ethan had seen those words before, stamped on files that ended with shallow graves and questions that never got answered. "They think they're coming to my place," Ethan said. "We give them something else instead." "Bait them," Lloyd agreed. "String them out. Make sure when they realize what they've walked into, they can't run." "And the sheriff?" Ethan asked. Lloyd's mouth twisted. "Grace is with him now," he said. "She's very persuasive when she has hard copies in her hand. If Dean Riker still has a spine, he'll meet us at the north end of Arroyo 7 with the one honest deputy he's got left. If he doesn't, then we know which side of the line he's on." Rex lifted his head, nose twitching. He smelled the storm, and under it, something else. Engines. They came in 2 black SUVs, lights off, moving slow through the haze. Sand hissed against metal. The temperature had dropped 10 degrees in an hour, the air tasting like grit and electricity. Briggs sat in the passenger seat of the lead vehicle, hand resting on the butt of his pistol, eyes narrowed behind ballistic glasses. He'd shaved his head recently, scalp shiny and tanned, a thick beard. Hid most of his jaw, but not the little twist of his mouth that said he enjoyed this. "Signal jammers live?" he asked. "Yeah," the driver answered, tapping a device glowing faint green on the dash. "Nothing in or out." "Good," Briggs said. "Last thing we need is some do-gooder live streaming this." He clicked his radio. "Teams Alpha and Bravo, on my mark," he said. "Objective is to seize and transport 1 male, Ethan Cole. Secondary objective, secure any electronic devices on scene. Dog, if present, is expendable. The word cracked along Ethan's spine as he lay prone behind a low ridge, watching their heat signatures through the thermal scope of the borrowed rifle Lloyd had produced from a closet that definitely did not pass as retired rancher. Dog. Expendable. Rex lay in the dirt beside him, cone removed, head tucked against Ethan's elbow. Ethan felt the dog's weight, solid and warm. "Not tonight," he whispered. He squeezed the mic clip to his collar. "Alpha in position," he murmured. "Targets entering grid." Across the arroyo, Lloyd's reply was a dry chuckle. "Copy that, Ghost," he said. "Old man in the tower." Farther north, where the storm thinned just enough to make out the shape of a sheriff's SUV tucked under a road cut, another voice crackled. "Sheriff here," Dean Riker said. His tone was strained, like a man who'd discovered the line between compromise and complicity, and didn't like the side he stood on. "Deputy Carla Lopez with me. Body cams rolling. You better be right about this, Cole." "You want to back out now," Ethan replied. "No shame in living to file paperwork another day." Riker's answer came after a beat. "I'm tired of paperwork that hides bodies," he said. "Let's get this done." The SUVs rolled to a stop on what had once been Ethan's driveway. All that remained of the trailer were charred pier blocks and twisted metal. The barn was a blackened outline. Briggs stepped out, sand whipping at his clothes. His men fanned out without needing orders, forming a loose perimeter. "Place looks like it already had an accident," one muttered. "Then Mr. Cole won't be missed," Briggs said. "Thermal?" "Nothing," another answered, scanning with a handheld. "No hot bodies, could be in the crawl space." "He's not a rabbit," Briggs said. "He'll have a bolt hole. Check the arroyo, and watch your feet. Storm like this, you can't see where the ground gives." Ethan smiled without humor. "You should listen to yourself more," he thought. Team Bravo moved toward the arroyo. 4 figures, hunched against the wind. They followed a path that had once led casually to a rope swing over a dry wash. Back when the property belonged to people who used land for fun, not cover. Halfway down, the lead man's boot hit a thin wire strung an inch above the ground. The flare that went off wasn't bright, not invisible. Light. It popped in the infrared spectrum, throwing off heat and confusion. "How the—" someone yelled, tearing off their goggles. "Contact left!" another shouted, firing blindly. Their muzzle flashes lit them up like beacons. Lloyd's first shot came from the rusted water tower on his side of the property line. The report was a low, heavy thud that blended with the wind. One of the Bravo team jerked backward, armor plate punched in. "Sniper!" Briggs barked. "Up high! Suppress and maneuver!" Ethan waited until Briggs himself moved to the edge of the pit, shouting into his radio until 2 of the Alpha teams sprinted toward the remnants of the barn. Then he squeezed his trigger. The round clipped a rock 3 inches from Briggs's boot, showering his legs with stone. Briggs dove for cover, cursing. "Cole!" he yelled, voice ripped ragged by the storm. "You think you can pick us off out here? We're not Taliban. We've got lawyers and contracts." Ethan's response was calm, carried on the wind. "And I've got the high ground," he said. "Some things don't change." Rex whined softly, weight shifting. Ethan laid a hand on his neck, easing him down. "Not your fight this time," he murmured. "You already paid." The battle wasn't pretty. It wasn't cinematic. It was a mess of poor visibility, bad footing, shouted commands half swallowed by sand. But it was controlled. Every time Briggs's men tried to flank, they ran into a wash that had been dug deeper the day before, or a fence line Ethan and Lloyd had reinforced with barbed wire reclaimed from 3 different junkyards. Every push they made took them farther from their vehicles, deeper into a box canyon of dry washes and cut banks. On the ridge, Riker and Deputy Lopez filmed everything: faces, weapons, plates on the SUVs. At one point, a red Mesa man turned and pointed directly toward them. Riker's hand went to his own sidearm. "No," Lopez snapped. "We're witnesses, not heroes. You said that yourself." Riker's jaw worked. "Heroes don't come with pensions," he muttered. Then, "Fine, but if they start firing uphill?" "Then we duck and keep filming," Lopez said. "Sir." Back in the pit, one of Briggs's men slipped. His foot hit a patch of sand slick with something else, the faint, sticky sheen of chemical runoff from the very drums Sunridge had dumped months before. He went down hard, cursing. "This ground is a hazard," he yelled. We're gonna break our... The rest of his sentence vanished under fire. Minutes stretched, bodies fell. Some breathed, some didn't. The storm did what storms do, made cowards of some men and sharpened others. Briggs was no coward. He adjusted. He sent 2 men back toward the SUVs, shouted something Ethan couldn't quite hear. A shadow detached itself from behind one of the vehicles, smaller than the armored figures. No rifle. Just a hoodie pulled up, shoulders hunched. Clay, Riker, Ethan swore under his breath. "What the hell are you doing here?" he hissed into his mic. On the ridge, Riker swore too. "I told him to stay home," the sheriff said. "Stupid boy followed the wrong father." Clay moved along the fence line, hands jammed in his pockets. He looked less like a golden boy now, and more like a kid who'd realized the game was rigged. His gaze flicked up once toward the ridge where his father crouched invisible, then down into the arroyo where Briggs and his men exchanged fire with an enemy they still couldn't quite see. He stopped near the place where Rex had gone over the edge days before, right by the still oozing drum. "Clay!" Briggs shouted above the wind. "Get your ass back in the truck!" Clay didn't move. Instead, he pulled his phone from his pocket and held it up. "You never said there'd be this much," he yelled. His voice cracked. "You told my dad it was just wastewater. This..." He gestured at the drum with the phone. "There are more down there. I saw 'em. We all did." "Put the phone down," Briggs snarled. Clay swallowed. The wind gusted, ripping the words from his mouth, but the mic on Riker's ridge caught enough. "Killed his dog. Dumped poison. Not just his land." Ethan's pulse jumped. "Grace," he murmured into a different channel. "You getting this?" In HD, her voice came from somewhere in the dark behind the sheriff's SUV. "Every pixel." Briggs climbed halfway up the bank, eyes wild. "Clay," he said, tone shifting, oily now. "Listen to me. You're upset. That's understandable. No one meant for the dog to..." "You told me to scare him," Clay shot back. "You said he was dangerous. You didn't say any of this." He took a step back. His heel hit loose rock. The bank crumbled. For one horrible second, it looked like he might pitch backward into the pit. Riker moved before anyone else. He dropped his camera, sliding down the ridge, scrambling across the shallow cut until he could grab his son's arm and haul him to solid ground. Briggs stared, disbelief painted on his face. He hadn't known the sheriff was there. His planning horizon shrank. He jerked his pistol up, aiming straight at the silhouette of father and son on the rise. Ethan fired. The shot took Briggs in the shoulder, spinning him. He dropped behind the nearest rock, cursing, clutching the wound. "Enough!" he gasped into his radio. "Fall back. We're aborting. This contract is compromised." "You're not going anywhere," Ethan said, sliding down his own side of the arroyo, rifle trained. Briggs looked up, squinting through sand and blood. "You think you win because you scared off a few contractors?" he sneered. "Kestrel doesn't lose. We just write a different report." "You tried that once," Ethan said. "You buried my unit under your paperwork. This time, I brought my own pen." Behind Briggs, someone moved. Rex. Ethan hadn't wanted him in the fight. Had told him to stay by the truck with Hannah. Hannah, who had insisted on coming out when she heard Ethan's voice on the radio, edged toward the old tone. But the dog had heard Evan's heartbeat spike, heard the gunfire, smelled the adrenaline. He had limped his way out of the cab the second Hannah turned her head to curse at the generator. Now he came down the bank, uneven but determined, teeth bared in a snarl that reached all the way back to the sandpits overseas. Briggs turned at the sound. His wounded arm was too slow. Rex lunged, jaws clamping down on Briggs' forearm with surgical precision, teeth finding tendon. Briggs screamed, gun flying from his hand. Ethan was there in 2 strides. "Out!" he snapped. Rex released instantly, falling back, chest heaving. Ethan kicked Briggs' weapon away, then planted his boot on the man's ribs, pinning him. "Colton Briggs," he said, voice flat. "You are under citizen's arrest for attempted murder, conspiracy to commit environmental crimes, and being an all-around piece of..." "Cole," Grace cut in. "Let's maybe leave that last one for the op-ed." Riker stumbled into view, one arm around Clay, the other hand on his own gun, which now pointed firmly at Briggs. "Sheriff Dean Riker," he said, words steadier than his breathing. "As the elected law enforcement officer of Sierra Blanca County, I'm going to make this official." He looked at Ethan. "You mind stepping aside, son?" he asked. Ethan hesitated. Then he moved his boot just enough. Riker holstered his weapon, slapped cuffs on Briggs with more force than necessary. "You have the right to remain silent," he said. "And if you're smart, you'll use it." Briggs spat blood into the sand. "You think those cuffs mean anything?" he hissed. "You're ants. We're gonna be famous," Grace said sweetly, stepping forward with her camera held high. The red recording light blinked. "Say cheese." One Kestrel Holdings didn't collapse overnight. Men like that never do. But footage of an armed private force trying to abduct a veteran on his own burned property under cover of a sandstorm, surrounded by leaking chemical drums, while the sheriff's son confessed on camera, traveled faster than any legal brief. Grace didn't post it to the Gazette's Lonely website. She sent it to 3 regional stations, one national outlet that still thought boots on the ground mattered, and a veterans advocacy group with more online clout than most politicians. Within 12 hours, the video had been viewed 2 million times. Within 24, an EPA regional office announced an emergency investigation into Sunridge's waste disposal practices. Kestrel stock took a measurable dip when trading opened Monday morning. Within 48, a federal task force rolled into Sierra Blanca in plain SUVs, with hidden antennas. They took Briggs. They took half of Red Mesa's team. They took copies of Ethan's files. They did not take Ethan. Maya's voice in his ear, over a secure line patched through Hannah's backroom Wi-Fi, was tight but triumphant. "You lit the fuse," she said. "Now they have to pretend they care. My boss is very interested in why black-budget buddy Briggsy was moonlighting in your county. You might even get an apology, on very expensive paper." "I don't need an apology," Ethan said, watching Rex limp across Lloyd's yard to sniff at a horse's hoof. "I need them to stop." "That's the one thing I can't promise," Maya replied. "But you drew blood. Take the win. Let the machine chew on itself for a while." He looked at the horizon. The lithium plant still stood. Its stacks still smoked. But now there were men in white suits walking the perimeter, taking samples. Trucks lined up at the gate looked less sure of their routes. "Rex still limps," he said. "He's breathing," Maya answered. "So are you. That's more than most of your unit got. Try not to waste it." They rebuilt slowly. Lloyd offered Ethan a room above the ranch's old tack room. Hannah insisted on monthly checkups for Rex, grumbling that she didn't run a rehab facility for idiots and their dogs, even as she slipped him homemade treats when she thought Ethan wasn't looking. Grace wrote a series of articles that didn't save print journalism, but did make Sierra Blanca look at itself in the mirror. Some didn't like what they saw. Some did. Some moved away. Dean Riker won his next election by a narrow margin, running on a platform of cleaning up the mess I helped make. He started by resigning his Sunridge advisory position and paying for Clay's community service hours in sweat instead of checks. Clay shoveled contaminated soil into lined dumpsters for 3 months straight. He didn't complain. He stopped hanging out with boys who liked to laugh at the suffering of things smaller than them. One afternoon, he drove out to Lloyd's ranch alone. Ethan watched from the porch as the kids stood at the fence line, hat in hand, looking like he'd rather eat glass than speak. "I came to say sorry," Clay said finally, "for everything." Rex padded forward, head cocked. Clay flinched. Rex stopped 2 feet away. He looked up at Ethan, waiting. "It's your call," Ethan said quietly. Rex's tail swished once. Then he stepped closer and shoved his nose under Clay's hand. The boy's shoulders shook once. Twice. "Doesn't mean I'm going to forget," Ethan said. "And it sure as hell doesn't erase what you did, but it's a start." Clay nodded, tears cutting clean lines down his dusty face. "I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make it right," he said. "Good," Ethan replied. "Start with your own house, then work outward." A wee tipo start. The months later, when the headlines moved on and the lawyers dug in and the plant either cleaned up or learned to hide better, the storm in Ethan's chest eased from a roar to a low, manageable hum. He sat on the fence one cool evening, watching the sun sink behind the mesas. Rex sat beside him on the rail, close enough that their shoulders touched, his hind legs still stiff but functional. The air smelled like creosote and clean dust. The water in the trough shimmered clear. "You know," Grace said from where she leaned against a post, camera dangling, "most people who come back from war just want to forget. You seem determined to remember." "Peace isn't forgetting. Ethan said after a moment. It's knowing exactly what happened and choosing not to let it own you. Rex huffed, as if in agreement, leaning more of his weight against Ethan's side. He dragged you through hell and back, Grace said, nodding at the dog. And when they tried to break you, they went for him first. They thought he was my weakness, Ethan said. They didn't understand he was my anchor. Rex's ears pricked at the word, as if he recognized something in Ethan's tone. Grace lifted her camera, framing the two of them against the falling light. Hold still, she said. This is the shot, the one that goes with the last piece. What last piece? Ethan asked. The one that's not about corruption or contracts, she said. The one about what happens after, about how you build something worth defending in the first place. She clicked the shutter. In the end, Ethan didn't disappear. He stayed. He helped Hannah start a training program for retired working dogs, teaching them how to be pets, and teaching their humans how to live with something that had seen more than they could ever say. He made coffee at Lloyd's kitchen table and argued with Maya over encrypted video calls about whether he should testify in hearings with names like oversight and accountability. He walked Rex along the arroyo, where the drum had once been, now lined with fresh soil and young mesquite. He let the dog sniff, explore, own the ground that had almost been his grave. He knew the ghosts would never truly leave. War. Betrayal. The faces of men he couldn't save. They were quieter now, because when the worst of it came for him again, not in a foreign valley, but in the dust of his own backyard, he hadn't run. He'd stood, not alone. Rex shifted beside him, leaning his full, healed weight into Ethan's leg. The scar along his neck had faded to a pale line under his fur. His eyes were sharp, watchful, content. Home, Ethan said softly. Rex thumped his tail once,